They told her humans were monsters, but I only wrapped her in my arms. The escape rain fell in sheets across the abandoned industrial district, each droplet carrying the metallic taste of pollution and despair. Zara pressed herself against the cold brick wall of a derelict warehouse, her luminescent blue skin barely visible through the torn fabric of her prison uniform. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the distant sound of tracking drones grew louder, their mechanical whirring cutting through the storm. She had never seen rain before today. In the containment facility, there had been only artificial light, sterile air, and the constant hum of machinery. The elders of her kind had warned her about the surface world, about the humans who ruled it with cruelty and violence. They are monsters, her grandmother had whispered during their last stolen moment together. They will hurt you in ways that will break your spirit forever. Now, crouched in an alley that reeked of decay and abandonment, Zara wondered if dying in the rain might be preferable to whatever fate awaited her if they caught her again. The experimental collar round her neck had been damaged during her escape, its red light flickering weakly. Without it, she couldn't understand human speech, couldn't blend in, couldn't survive. A shadow moved at the mouth of the alley. Zara's breath caught in her throat as a figure approached through the rain. Human, male, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a worn leather jacket that had seen better days. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and his boots splashed through puddles as he walked with purpose. This was it. This was how she would die. But the human who couldn't have been much older than her 23 years stopped several feet away. He raised his hands, palms forward, in what even she recognized as a gesture of peace. When he spoke, his voice was gentle, though she couldn't understand the words. The translator in her collar sparked feebly, catching only fragments. Hurt, safe, help. Zara shrank further against the wall, her body trembling from cold and terror. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but exhaustion had settled. Deep in her bones, she had been fleeing for 2 days, surviving on nothing but puddle water and the bitter berries she'd found growing wild in the ruins. The human, she could see his green eyes now, surprisingly warm despite the storm. Slowly shrugged off his jacket. The movement was deliberate, non-threatening. He held the garment out toward her, still maintaining his distance. Rain soaked through his thin shirt, but he didn't seem to care. "Please," he said, and somehow that word translated clearly. "You're freezing." Zara stared at the offered jacket, confusion warring with survival instinct. This wasn't how the stories went. Humans were supposed to be violent, aggressive, ready to capture and experiment on her kind without mercy. They weren't supposed to stand in the rain offering their own warmth to a stranger. Thunder rolled overhead, and she made her choice. With trembling fingers, she reached out and took the jacket. It was warm from his body heat and smelled of motor oil and something distinctly masculine. As she pulled it around her shoulders, the human smiled, not the predatory grin she'd been taught to fear, but something soft and genuinely relieved. He pointed to himself. "Damon," he said clearly. She touched her chest, her voice barely audible above the storm. "Zara." "Zara," he repeated, and the way he said her name with respect, with kindness, made something crack open in her chest. He gestured down the alley, toward the deeper shadows. Safe place, food, warm. The drones were getting closer. Zara could hear them now, their searchlights beginning to sweep the area. She looked into Damon's eyes, seeing nothing but sincere concern, and made a decision that would change everything. She nodded. As they moved deeper into the maze of abandoned buildings, Zara clutched his jacket tighter around herself. For the first time since her escape, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps the elders had been wrong. Perhaps not all humans were monsters after all. Sanctuary Demon's hideout was a converted maintenance room deep beneath the old subway system, accessible only through a series of forgotten tunnels that wound like arteries through the city's abandoned infrastructure. As they descended through rust-stained corridors lit by battery-powered lanterns, Zara marveled at how someone could create a home in such desolation. The space itself was surprisingly cozy, a far cry from the sterile cells she'd known all her life. Salvaged furniture created distinct living areas, a kitchenette with a small camp stove, a workbench covered in electronic components, and a sleeping area partitioned by hanging curtains. Books lined makeshift shelves, their spines worn. From reading, the air smelled of coffee and mechanical grease, tinged with the earthy dampness of the underground. Not much, Damon said, his translator device now properly connected to her failing collar. But it's home. Zara stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed by the simple domesticity of it all. In the facility, she'd shared cramped quarters with dozens of others, sleeping on metal cots under harsh fluorescent lights. Privacy had been a foreign concept. This place, with its warm lighting and personal touches, felt impossibly luxurious. "Sit," Damon encouraged, gesturing to a patched armchair near a small electric heater. "You need food, dry clothes," as he busied himself at the stove. Zara allowed herself to truly look at him. For the first time, his movements were economical, practiced the result of years of living alone. There was a gentleness to the way he handled even mundane objects, as if he'd learned to be careful with everything because so little in his world was permanent. "Why are you helping me?" she asked when he brought her a bowl of something that smelled like heaven. The soup was simple vegetables and broth, but it was the first hot meal she'd tasted in her entire life. Damon settled into a chair across from her, cradling his own bowl. "Because you needed help." He paused, studying her face. "And because I know what it's like to be hunted. You're a criminal. I used to work for them," he said quietly. "The corporations that run the facilities. I designed security systems, tracking technology." His jaw tightened. "I thought I was making the world safer. Took me too long to realize what I was actually building cages for." Zara's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "You worked for them." Past tense. His green eyes met hers steadily. "When I finally understood what was happening in those places, I tried to go public. Turns out whistleblowing against trillion-dollar industries is bad for your health. Been hiding down here for 3 years now." The revelation should have terrified her. He was one of them, one of the architects of her people's suffering. Instead, she found herself studying the regret in his expression, the way his shoulders carried what looked like years of guilt. "I won't hurt you," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I swear on whatever is left of my soul that I will never hurt you." Something in his voice, raw and honest, broke through her defenses. "They told us humans were monsters," she whispered. "That you felt no compassion, no love, that you would torture us for sport." Damon set down his bowl, his expression pained. "Some do, the ones running those facilities. They've forgotten what it means to be human, but not all of us." He leaned forward slightly. "What do you feel when you look at me?" Zara considered the question seriously. Fear, yes, but not the bone-deep terror she'd expected. Instead, there was curiosity, and something else, a strange warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled. When he spoke her name, confused, she admitted, "You're nothing like what they said." Maybe that's because hatred is taught, not born. He stood, moving to a trunk near the back wall. "Here, these might fit." The clothes he offered were clean and soft as sweater that would dwarf her small frame, and pants that could be rolled up. Human clothes, but chosen with care for her comfort. "I'll give you privacy," he said, moving toward the curtained sleeping area. "Take your time." As he disappeared behind the partition, Zara held the sweater to her chest. It smelled like him, that same combination of motor oil and warmth that was already becoming familiar. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe she might actually be safe. When she emerged, dressed in clothes that hung loose but felt like an embrace, she found Damon reading by lamplight. He looked up and smiled, and Zara's heart did something strange and fluttery. "Better?" he asked. She nodded, settling back into the armchair. "Damon, will you tell me about the surface world? The real world, not the one they described to us?" His smile widened, and he closed his book. "It's beautiful," he began, and spent the next hour painting pictures with words of sunsets and seasons, of music and art, of all the wonders that existed beyond the gray walls of her former prison. As she listened, Zara began to understand that perhaps the greatest lie they'd told her wasn't about human cruelty, it was about limiting her world to nothing but suffering. Growing trust. 3 weeks passed in the underground sanctuary, And Zara began to understand what the word home truly meant. Each morning, she woke to the smell of coffee brewing and the soft sounds of Damon tinkering with his projects. He'd fashioned her a proper bed from salvaged materials, respectfully maintaining the privacy partition while ensuring she felt welcome in every corner of their shared space. The days developed a rhythm that felt revolutionary after a lifetime of rigid facility schedules. Mornings were for learning, Damon teaching her about human culture, technology, and the complex political landscape above ground. Afternoons were for practical skills, how to blend in, how to navigate the city's legitimate sectors, how to defend herself if necessary. Your people aren't the only ones being held, Damon explained one afternoon as he showed her surveillance footage on his cobbled-together computer system. There are facilities across 7 continents, different species, all classified as non-human entities by the corporate courts. Zara studied the images with growing horror and determination. How many? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. His fingers tightened on the edge of the desk. The world thinks they're research facilities studying alien biology. They don't know about the intelligence, the families, the cultures being destroyed. She turned to face him fully. But you're trying to stop it. I'm trying to document it. Build a case that can't be buried or dismissed. He gestured to the walls lined with hard drives and data storage. Every piece of evidence I can gather, every testimony from people like you who've escaped. People like me. Damon's expression grew gentle. You're not the first I've helped, Zara. There have been others over the years. Most move on to safe houses further from the city, new identities in rural areas where corporate oversight is lighter. The revelation stung more than she expected. Oh, she tried to keep her voice neutral. So this is temporary. It's whatever you want it to be. His green eyes searched her face. I never force anyone to leave, but I also never ask anyone to stay if they'd be safer elsewhere. That evening, as they shared their usual simple dinner, Zara found herself watching Damon with new awareness. Over the weeks, she'd cataloged his small kindnesses, how he always served her food first, how he gave her the warmest blanket without comment, how he'd learned to move quietly in the mornings because she was still adjusting to feeling safe. Enough for deep sleep. Tell me about your life before, she said suddenly. Before you went underground. Damon paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. Not much to tell. I was good at my job, bad at relationships, spent too much time with machines, not enough with people. He smiled ruefully. Turns out that's probably why I was so slow to recognize what was happening. I saw efficiency problems, not ethical ones. Do you regret it? The isolation? I regret what I built. I don't regret leaving it behind. He met her eyes across their small table. These have been the best weeks I've had in years, if I'm being honest. Something warm and dangerous bloomed in Zara's chest. Even with a fugitive alien disrupting your routine, especially with a fugitive alien who makes me remember why I wanted to be better in the first place. The air between them shifted, becoming charged with an awareness that had been building for days. Zara felt her cheeks warm, grateful that her blue skin didn't show blushes the way human skin did. Damon, she began, but he was already shaking his head. I know what you're going to say, and you don't have to. I know this situation is complicated, that you might feel grateful or stop. The firmness in her own voice surprised her. Don't tell me what I feel. He fell silent, watching her with careful attention. They told me humans were incapable of love. She continued, that you only knew how to take, to use, to consume. But every day, you show me something different. The way you read to me when I can't sleep. The way you've never once made me feel like a burden or a charity case. The way you look at me like I'm a person, not a specimen. You are a person, he said quietly. The most extraordinary person I've ever met. Then stop deciding what's best for me. She stood, moving around the table to where he sat. I'm not staying because I'm grateful. I'm staying because when I imagine leaving, it feels like tearing something essential out of my chest. Damon looked up at her, his expression vulnerable in a way that made her heart ache. Zara, if they find us, if they find you, then we'll face it together. She reached out, touching his face gently. His skin was warm, slightly rough with stubble, completely human and completely wonderful. Unless you want me to leave. Never, he breathed, covering her hand with his own. I've been falling in love with you since the night you trusted me enough to follow me home. When he kissed her, soft and reverent, Zara understood that everything her people had taught her about humans was wrong. They weren't monsters incapable of love. They were capable of love so profound it could rebuild a broken person from the inside out. Dangerous discoverith morning, everything changed, started like any other. Zara woke to the familiar sounds of Damon preparing breakfast, sunlight filtering down through the grates above their underground haven. She'd grown to love these quiet moments before they began their day, when she could lie in bed and simply listen to him move through their space with unconscious care for her continued sleep. Morning, beautiful, he called softly when he heard her stirring. Morning yourself, she replied, emerging from behind the partition in one of his oversized shirts. Her silver hair still tousled from sleep, the easy domesticity of it still amazed her. 6 weeks ago, she couldn't have imagined a world where she woke up safe, loved, and free to choose how to spend her day. But as Damon handed her coffee, she noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set tight. What's wrong? Got a priority message through the encrypted channel last night. He gestured toward his computer setup. There's been a breakthrough in the documentation project. One of the other facilities they're planning to go public. Full media exposure, leaked documents, survivor testimonies. Zara's heart leaped. That's wonderful news. It should be. Damon's expression remained troubled, but the timing is suspicious. 3 other safe houses have been compromised in the past week. People who've been hidden for years, suddenly discovered and taken. The implication hit her like ice water. They're being betrayed. That's what I'm afraid of. He turned to face her fully. Zara, I think we need to consider relocating, at least temporarily, until we know how deep this goes. She nodded, but before she could respond, his communication array crackled to life. The voice that emerged was desperate, barely recognizable through static and fear. This is Nathan. Sector 7 safe house. They found us. Zara, if you're listening, they know about Damon. They know about the underground facility. They're coming. For you specifically. Run. Run now. The transmission cut to silence. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Damon was in motion, grabbing emergency packs he'd prepared but hoped never to use. Go. Get dressed. We have maybe 10 minutes before the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. Through the ventilation system, they could hear the distant sound of heavy footsteps. Multiple teams moving through the tunnels with military precision. The north exit, Damon whispered, pulling on his jacket. It leads to the old freight tunnels. If we can reach the surface. No. Zara's voice was steady, though her hands shook as she dressed quickly. If they know about this place, they know about the exits too. Then what? They want me specifically. You heard the message. She turned to face him, her expression resolute. I'm not going to let you die protecting me. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't even think about it. Damon, listen to me. She gripped his shoulders, forcing him to meet her eyes. I can surrender myself. Buy you time to escape. You still have all the documentation, the evidence. You can continue the work. Without you. The pain in his voice made her heart clench. If it means you live. Yes. No. He pulled her against him, fierce and desperate. We go together or not. At all. I'm not losing you, Zara. I can't. The footsteps were getting closer. Voices now. Coordinated communications. They had minutes at most. There's another way, Damon said suddenly, his eyes lighting with dangerous inspiration. The maintenance shaft that leads to the power substation. It's too narrow for their equipment. But we could. An explosion rocked the facility. The main entrance had been breached. Move, he commanded, grabbing her hand. They ran through their home, for it had become home, Zara realized, in ways that had nothing to do with the physical space, and everything to do with the love they'd built within it. Past the kitchen where they'd shared their first real conversation. Past the workbench where he'd taught her about human technology. Past the bed where they'd discovered that love could exist between species in ways that transcended every boundary. The maintenance shaft was behind a false panel near the back wall. As Damon pried it open, Zara took one last look at the life they were leaving behind. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," he replied, boosting her up into the narrow space. "And we're going to survive this, all of it." As they crawled through darkness toward an uncertain future, Zara held onto those words. Behind them, she could hear their sanctuary being torn apart, their safe haven violated and destroyed. But ahead, however dangerous, lay the possibility of freedom. They'd found love in the darkness. Now they had to fight to keep it in the light. The hunt was on, but they were no longer the same people who had hidden in the underground. They were something new, something stronger. They were each other's monsters and each other's salvation, and together, they were going to change the world. New dawn, the freight train rattled through the pre-dawn darkness, carrying them toward a horizon Zara had never imagined she'd see. 3 days of running, hiding, and carefully planned escapes had brought them to this moment, stowed away in a cargo car, bound for the Northern Territories, where corporate oversight was thin and questions were rarely asked. Damon dozed fitfully against a stack of supply crates, his arm around her waist, his body positioned protectively between her and the car's opening. Even in sleep, he was guarding her. The sight made her chest tight with emotions she was still learning to name. The past 72 hours had been a blur of terror and determination. Their escape through the power substation had worked, but barely. They'd emerged into a city on high alert. Corporate security forces sweeping every sector. Damon's network of underground contacts had proven invaluable, passing them from safe house to safe house like a relay race against time. Now, watching the landscape blur past through gaps in the car, siding, Zara marveled at the world beyond. The cities, rolling hills dotted with trees, vast expanses of grass that moved like water in the wind. Skies so wide and blue they made her dizzy with possibility. This was the world they'd hidden from her people, not just the corruption of the cities, but the beauty that still existed beyond corporate control. Beautiful, isn't it? Damon's voice was rough with sleep. "I never imagined there was so much empty space." She leaned back against his chest, feeling his arms tighten around her. "So much room to simply exist. That's where we're heading. A place where existing is enough." Their destination was a settlement called Heaven's Rest, a community of refugees, dissidents, and those who'd chosen life on the margins over compliance with corporate rule. Damon had contacts there, people who could provide new identities and a chance to start over. "What if they don't accept me?" Zara asked, voicing a fear that had been growing stronger as they traveled away from everything familiar. "They will." His confidence was absolute. "These are people who've all been where you are, running from systems that tried to define them, control them, use them. They understand what it means to build a new life from nothing." The train began to slow as they approached their destination. Through the gaps, Zara could see a small station surrounded by modest buildings, gardens, and solar rays. People moved with unhurried purpose, going about their morning routines in a way that spoke of genuine community, rather than corporate efficiency. "Ready?" Damon asked as the train ground to a halt. "With you?" "Yes." They slipped from the cargo car into the crisp morning air. The station master, a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, greeted them as if she'd been expecting their arrival. "You must be the engineer and his partner," she said warmly. "I'm Ruth. Welcome to Heaven's Rest." As they walked through the settlement, Zara was struck by the diversity of the population. Humans worked alongside beings she recognized as escapees from other facilities, scaled humanoids from the desert installations, tall, ethereal figures with translucent skin from the mountain complexes, even a few of her own kind. Their blue skin catching the sunlight as they tended gardens or repaired equipment. "How is this possible?" she whispered to Damon. "People like us," he replied. "People who decided that love was stronger than fear." Their assigned housing was a small cottage on the edge of the settlement, surrounded by fruit trees and equipped with everything they needed to start their new life. But more than the physical space, it was the freedom that took Zara's breath away, the knowledge that she could wake up each morning and choose how to spend her day, who to become, what to build. That evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. I used to think the stories about humans were true, she said quietly, that you were monsters incapable of compassion. Some are, Damon replied honestly, just like some of every species are capable of cruelty. But most of us are just trying to figure out how to love each other despite our differences. And now, he turned to face her, his green eyes reflecting the last light of day. Now I know that love doesn't require us to be the same species, or even the same kind of being. It just requires us to be brave enough to see each other clearly. Zara leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. They told me humans were monsters, she murmured against his neck. But you only ever wrapped me in your arms. Always, he promised, pressing a kiss to her temple. For as long as you'll have me. In the distance, they could hear laughter from the settlement's community center, where species from across the galaxy gathered each evening to share meals, stories, and the simple joy of being free. Tomorrow, they would join them. Tomorrow, they would begin building the life they dreamed of in the darkness of their underground sanctuary. But tonight, they held each other as the stars emerged overhead, to beings from different worlds who had found something universal in the space between heartbeats. Love, as it turned out, was the most human thing of all and the most alien and the most precious. In a universe that had tried to teach them fear, they had chosen to learn love instead. And in choosing each other, they had chosen hope for a future where such choices would no longer be revolutionary, but simply the way things were meant to be. The monsters, they had discovered, were never the ones who loved. They were only the ones who forgot how.